Welcome to the Empowered Mothers Network podcast, supporting mothers to be the best version of themselves. I'm Sarah and this is episode 16. This one is called Spinning Plates. So this episode is like following on from last fortnight's episode, which was, we were talking about duties and kind of what duties are ours and what aren't. So that's sort of following on to this week, just talking about spinning plates, or essentially having too many duties, to-dos, responsibilities, things like that, too much going on that we have to juggle. So if you haven't listened to episode 15 yet, then maybe give that one a listen first, because that's got a few tips in it about kind of working out what are our actual duties and what we need to take on. And then we can talk, once we know those duties, in this episode about kind of balancing them all. So in this episode, I'll be discussing why we have too much on and some of the things we can do about that to kind of reduce the load. So stay tuned. So why do we have too many plates to spin? I think regardless of our own personal circumstances, it seems to be a universal problem nowadays for mothers, that there's just essentially too much going on a lot of the time. And I think that can apply, even if you're in the world of work or you're not in the world of work, if you've got one child or multiple children, if you've got family support or if you haven't got family support. I think regardless of, all these different circumstances that we find ourselves in as mothers, we're still all having the same issues of trying to spin too many plates, having too much stuff on our to-do list, and just generally getting overwhelmed and kind of burned out with it all. So if we're looking at why that is, I think I touched on this last episode with the duties, where I talked about like the expectations of society weighing heavily upon us as mothers, and we're sort of pressured now to undertake quite a few different roles that historically, primarily, not always, but primarily were roles that were undertaken like separately. So sort of like running a house, looking after the children, going to work or having a job, and having a social life as well. And like I say, it doesn't really seem to matter whether you're in one circumstance or another, whether you're in the world of work or you're not currently working at the moment, or you've got your own business. There's always so many different things to balance, and it's again trying to get that like work-life balance as well. That's a really difficult one for a lot of mums, having the time to kind of put your energy into friendships with people who kind of lift you up and are a good match for you, and putting energy into your relationship with your partner if you have one, and having energy to put in your relationship with your children. And then something I've discovered as well since my kids have been in school, I think by the time this podcast goes out, we'll probably be either well into the summer holidays or past the summer holidays. And then I will have 3 children in school, although one will be in nursery. But yeah, the sheer amount of like school admin per child per year, there's like so many different things to remember, and so many like different channels of communication as well. As like school apps, emails, printed take-home letters. There's just so much information coming at you just on a purely admin level for that. And then like parties and social lives for your kids as well. So regardless of your own circumstances, if you've got kids, there's all that kind of admin and organising their lives. There is just so much to spin. So when we get to this place of there's too much going on, we've got too many plates spinning, we cannot keep them all in the air. They start falling over, and we're like running around like crazy just trying to keep them all spinning. When we get to this place, we can maybe start off becoming what we'd recognise as, stressed. We can feel that in our bodies. We might start to feel quite anxious and depressed even if normally we're we tend to be quite positive and upbeat, and that side, like we don't feel anxious about things very easily, but we can start to feel that when there are too many things going on. And over time, sort of over a longer period, this can obviously escalate into things like full-on burnout. So that's, full-on burnout is not something that's going to support us in being a mother or us in our own selves. So, inevitably, obviously, it's something we want to avoid. So what can we do about the problem of spinning too many plates? How can we make things easier on ourselves and still have that kind of balance of all the different aspects of our lives, because we don't want to cut some things off completely, but how can we balance that and also not burn ourselves out? So firstly, I think, is checking in with our expectations of what we can do or be, and if they are realistic, if we can realistically juggle all these different things. That's something where you've got to sit down and be really honest with yourself, because I think a lot of us have these expectations that we should be able to do all these things. And again, I've said it loads of times in podcasts before, but you've got things like social media and comparisonitis, and everybody else seems to be bossing it, this, that and the other, bossing, holding down a job and looking after the kids and having an Instagram home. And that's all that side of comparisonitis kind of puts this pressure on us that we should be able to be at a certain level. And I say, for me, as someone who has realised over the last few years that my brain is what you would term as neurodiverse, so I've had to kind of accept that sometimes I can't spin as many plates as I would like to, or as I feel traditionally that I should. So that you might find that for your own self, that maybe you have this expectation that you should be spinning a certain amount of plates, you should be able to achieve or do or be a certain amount of things or roles in your life. But if it's causing you, obviously physical symptoms, definitely it's too much, and also sort of mental, emotional symptoms as well. If there's anything there in your body that's saying, hey, this is too much, I'm not dealing with this, then you know that something needs to change. So firstly, it's getting really realistic and honest with ourselves, I think, about what our expectations are of ourselves and what we can take on even at this point of life. So I will mention that in a minute. So assuming we're then going into this with the right expectations and the right mindset, taking stock of what we've got on, what is ours, and looking at things that could be either delegated or shared or outsourced. So, my go-to example is cleaning the house. If you've got the funds to do so, then it may be worth your while employing a cleaner, because that helps take some of the load off of you if you can afford to do so. Things like childcare is an obvious one as well. That's an obvious one in being able to help you. And anything that can be, even in terms of house cleaning, you might rather sort of share that with your kids if they're old enough to be able to help out, get them to do some of the chores and spread the load a little bit, just so it's not all, the expectation isn't all on you as a singular person. And also practicing delegation and practicing asking for help when we need it. And for some of us, that's easier than other people. And I think as well, it's something where, you might be in a role at work where you naturally do delegate if you're, say, in a management role or something. But you can get home, and in the home environment, it can be completely different. You can just really sort of feel that you have to take on everything yourself and it's your responsibility. So working out firstly what you can have a hand with. Secondly, letting go what can be what could you stop doing? What can be dropped? What can be let go of? So again, this is another one that takes like a really honest look, because, mostly we're going to say, well, I'm not doing anything in my life at the moment that I need to stop doing, because, why would we be doing it otherwise? We don't like to think that we are wasting our time on doing something. We like to think that everything that we're doing is of value and has a purpose. So it's really getting honest with what could go, what could you stop doing, what could you, I'm going to use house cleaning again, could you let that go a little bit? Or if if you've got really high standards of cleaning, could you lower the expectations a bit? So that might be one form of letting go, is just changing expectations, altering expectations. So when we're looking for things to let go, it's just asking ourselves what isn't working. So if there's something you're doing that, again, maybe you feel physical symptoms of like, I don't want to be doing this, and you feel it in your body, and you feel that resistance between what you are doing and wanting to do it. If there's some resistance there, then that might be an area worth looking at. Obviously, we can't always just drop everything we don't want to do. For example, if you're in a job that you don't like going to, it might not be so easy as to just say, right, I'm going to stop doing this job. But really being honest with ourselves and looking at areas it isn't working, and any areas where we can let go of something, even if that's like short term. So it might not be that, we might have to just stop doing something for a little while. It might not be that we stop doing something indefinitely and don't do it again, but it might be, I'm doing this task, or I've been doing this thing, and it's not really working out for me at the moment. I'm feeling resentful about doing it, or it doesn't feel good doing it. So I might just, have a test period and stop doing it for a while, and see how that goes. And then, maybe in the future I'll want to come back to it with like a renewed sense of passion about that thing. Or maybe in the future I'll find actually it's been easier since I let go of doing it, and it's freed up my time a little bit for all the other things that I need to do. So hopefully, once we've really looked at all the little plates we have in our lives, hopefully we can at least try and take a few out of the equation, and maybe shift our expectations a little bit. So then we have whatever is left, which, maybe after the first two exercises, it might be a little bit simpler for you to then spin all those plates, or you might still have a hell of a lot on. So looking at what's left for you to deal with is then becoming a case of prioritising those things whilst taking stock of your expectations and that level. And whether you're a naturally organised person or not also comes into it, I think. If you're naturally an organised person, it can be easier to keep all the plates spinning, whereas if you're naturally not so organised, it can be more of a firefighting experience. So you might prioritise on like a wider level of life, like so things like your job, your social life, your parenting, your partner relationship, your hobbies, your business. On that wider spectrum of life, it might be that you choose to prioritise a couple of those over other things and put more energy into either giving your time to those, or putting more money into those areas, or something where you're giving a bit more of a spotlight to one or two of those areas than the others, prioritising them. Or it might be more on a like zoomed in level. So you might look at just your relationship with your partner, for example, and say, I'm going to prioritise like listening more to what they have to say, or I'm going to prioritise spending one-on-one time with them. So you're sort of zooming it down to one aspect of your life, but maybe looking at different things within that. I don't want to say tasks, because like if it's a relationship, they're not tasks to complete and achieve. We don't want to look at it like that, but prioritising certain aspects of that. The things that I feel help me the most in spinning a lot of plates are having consistent routines. And again, that doesn't mean like the full day, and it doesn't mean so rigid a routine that you can't bring in, if something goes wrong, because it always does. Something goes awry, something doesn't work, somebody doesn't turn up, something happens at a different time that you expect it. But having some sort of vague routine in place just to help the day flow, even if that's just like a morning routine and an evening routine, or a routine, at a set time on a set day or whatever. That ties in with habits as well, little micro habits. Again, if you haven't read Atomic Habits, that's really useful. And you can, I think we underestimate how much we can kind of get done or achieve or keep on top of just through small habits, just incremental small habits, which can stack up often on a daily basis. But just even devoting like 10 minutes a day just to something like exercise, for example. If you've just devoted like 10 minutes a day to a specific type of exercise, you'll find that builds up over time. And of course, what we touched on last week about duties and commitments, prioritising the ones that, are the most important. So maybe making a note of like, what are the non-negotiables for you, dropping or taking your eye off of, what are those things that you're committed to doing on a regular basis, and that, for love nor money you would not be changing your kind of time and energy commitment into those things. Finally, it can be useful to really look at the bigger picture as well and like zoom out a little bit. I think sometimes when we are stuck in spinning too many plates, we are stuck in like the daily grind of life, and we just get caught up in all the little nitty-gritty details. But if you are able to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, that can give you a little bit more objectivity. And sometimes when you do that, you can realise, I'm spending a lot of time doing this, but actually really in the grand scheme of it, it's not that important. And finally, oftentimes as well, when you are getting to the place where you're sort of more in touch with yourself and standing in your own power and more aware of who you are and how you operate in the world, you can find that your intuition is getting stronger, and that can help to guide you in, what plates you should be spinning or you choose to spin. It can guide you in what is feeling good, what is feeling expansive, and where maybe you want to, maybe you feel that actually I want to put more time and energy into this if I could just, not for all the other things I have to do, but there's something here that I want to pursue and I want to put my time into, and using your intuition as well to kind of ferret out those things that aren't feeling good and just don't feel like they're part of the bigger picture, the bigger purpose. And yeah, ultimately it's all a balancing act, really. That's a lot of what being a mother is about, is balancing, I think, your own expectations and also expectations of other people around you, little people. So I would love to know in the comments whether you feel that you are spinning too many plates. So let me know in the comments if you feel you've got too much on, or if you have a really busy life and lots of different things on your to-do list. Do you have any particular techniques that help you to balance everything, help you to manage? Do you enjoy routines and habits, or are you more sort of go with the flow but it all works out anyway? There's no right or wrong answer, there's just loads of different ways to go about it. So I'd love to know a bit more about spinning plates for you, and if you want to keep up to date with the podcast episodes, you can hit subscribe on YouTube, or you can join the mailing list at empoweredmothersnetwork.com. Also, if you are needing help with like letting go of things and simplifying, I do have the 10-day simplicity challenge, which I have a link for in the description below, so you can join that and work through that at your own pace if you're needing a bit of an extra hand with like letting go and decluttering and all sorts of things like that. But otherwise, I'll see you for the next podcast episode.